Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Hi, Alanna. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
So my name is Alanna Martin, and when I'm not writing books, I live in New Hampshire, and I do evaluation research for a living. So not the most exciting thing in the world, which is probably why I write books.
Yeah.
But it helps with that whole research component.
I can imagine. I think it's interesting, like when I speak to authors and have like different day jobs, and you're like, it's just an opportunity to get in writing as an escape and just kind of like just creating your own worlds, and you create your own things, and allows you to have a break from the day job, even though some day jobs may be interesting to have. So
Totally, yeah.
So did you always wanted to write romance novels, or what was your journey into the romance journey, like into writing happily ever afters?
Yeah, so I actually did not start out writing romance. I always loved like having like romance side plots in the stories I was reading, but didn't really read them. Actually started like maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was going through cancer treatment, and I needed like these happily ever after, like good feeling stories, just kind of like, inject them into my brain kind of thing. And so I started switching over and reading more and more romance as I was doing that. And that's where I was like, maybe I should write one.
Mm-hmm. So do you remember what was your gateway romance drug? Like I call it the gateway drug, the gateway romance book, or the type or the genre that just took you into this like wonderful world of happily ever afters?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because it started out, I was reading a lot of YA actually at the time, and then I kind of transitioned from YA to new adult to romance, but honestly, like the whole time was just such a blur, and I was reading so much, and it was just pure escapism, like running through book after book. Like I don't even know, I couldn't tell you what it was.
It's okay.
But it was everything. It was the whole. It was the whole.
I had a similar transition. I was reading YA, and then I learned about new adult like just randomly, and I was like, oh, let me just give it a try. And from new adult, it just took me to contemporary romance, and then and then I evolved to historical romance and paranormal romance and like all these other romance. Like there's like so many books,
Yep. So. Yeah, there's so much to choose from. Everything was like so different. Like I love that romance is like all these different subgenres. So if you want to read romance and fantasy, you can do that. If you want to read romance and like action, you can do that. Mm-hmm. It's great.
Yeah, it is great. So what has been the process of writing during the pandemic, and what's kind of self-care have you been doing just to manage this unprecedented times?
Yeah, I would, in some kind of weird way, I would say like the pandemic has actually sort of helped me with my writing. I was on a really tight deadline because I have 3 books in the series, and like really, really fast deadlines coming up for all of them. So the fact that there was this pandemic in a horrible way made it easier to like keep my butt in the chair and keep writing, because like, well, I can't go out and do all those fun things that I wanted to do. So might as well sit here and write. And then it was also a way to kind of live vicariously through my characters. Like I can't go hiking and I can't go out to eat, so let me have my characters do all those fun things that I can't do and make myself feel a little bit better. So the escapism, I think, kind of helped with that. Yeah, like self-care, I think like a lot of people, I've just been doing a lot more baking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love this. Yeah, I think it's like just taking it a day at a time. I love writing. For you, writing has been an escape to experience the different things vicariously. And so as a reader, it's been an escape to see characters hug each other, go out to dinner, go hiking, kissing,
Yeah, just hanging out with friends in person,
Yeah. Like all these meet cutes and all these like in real life interactions. As someone who has not had in real life interactions in a year, I'm like, I miss that.
Totally.
So I love this. So let's talk about Heart and Leash and just Hearts of Alaska, the series. Like, did you have the series plan when you pitch it to your publisher? Like, did you knew which couples we're going to have and all the different details, or was it something you pants your way through? Like, you may have some sort of idea, but then, when you write books, like, things happen. So.
Yeah. Well, we pitched this as a series to Berkeley. So I knew like who the main characters were going to be in each story, who the couple was, and kind of had this, not the individual plot so much, but like this whole sort of arc for the feud that kind of runs through the series kind of planned out, so that I knew it wasn't going to be wrapped up in the first book, but how I wanted to take it into the second book and then where it was going to end up by the end of the third book. So that each book, is standalone on the different couples, but like there would still be this overarching plot that goes through it.
So you knew the competing families were having a field day, just getting, these two prominent families having an issue in the town and just, going on war. So
yeah.
I love this. So Heart and Leash, where you're talking about these two families and these opposing, I don't say they're rivals. They're just basically come from different sides of the story, and they have a connection, and they're hiding in secret, and then they're like, things happen, to get them together. But I think like, you speak about the idea of leaving hometown and then coming back home, and having, appreciating the things that you left behind, a few years later. Did you have that journey for Taylor as like, did you imagine Taylor's journey to be like that? Or was it something surprising that just,
I think it kind of worked a little bit both ways. Like I think in my head originally, I thought she was going to be a lot more resistant to coming back. Mm-hmm. But when you start writing and it's like characters just sort of like, hey, reveal themselves to you, and suddenly maybe it was my longing to want to go to visit another place or something, but all the little things that started to influence her came out a lot more strongly than I was suspecting.
Yeah, I can identify with Taylor's journey. I left home at 18 and I was like, same thing. I'm from Puerto Rico. And for me, that was like a big part. Like I spent years was like, I need to escape Puerto Rico. Like I need to escape it. And funny enough, like, 20 years later, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll come back and live in Puerto Rico. Like it would be nice. Like, I think there's something to be said about coming back home as as the years you have some distance and you kind of like realize like you appreciate the things that you have, like your family and your culture and your food and your stuff.
Exactly. I think it's such a common thing that when you're young, you're like, oh, I need to break free. I need to go, and you're sort of be my own person. And then afterwards, you develop that appreciation for things.
Yeah.
And especially now, like I live so far from my family and pandemic made me think, well, I can't even go visit right now. So it's harder.
Yeah. So did you imagine, what was the research process of setting the book in Alaska? Like, are there some similarities? Did you travel? Did you research, Google? What was the process? And
did a lot of
make-believe of town, but still.
Yeah, did a lot of research online. I haven't actually been to Alaska. It's one of those places I really, really wanted to go. And before the pandemic, I was hoping like maybe like last year I would have been able to go, but obviously that didn't happen. So I did a lot of research, did a lot of Google. I based a lot of the stuff in the books on real life towns that I could find online, like even doing things like, looking up the restaurants, reading restaurant reviews, and, Google Street View is great for all that kinds of stuff. And my family's vacationed in Alaska, so I was looking through all of their photographs and listening to their stories. And I have in-laws who live there too, in a very different part of Alaska though. So just a lot of digging into resources that were available.
I love this. And so I love the role of pets in this story, where we have 3 dogs who are rambunctious and they're so cute. I just want to pet them. Like they sound like the perfect pandemic pets to have, And then we have a cat. We got Merlot. Did you have a plan, like the families, the whole pet situation, how one family has cats and the other family has puppies and they're known for it, and
Oh yeah, definitely. That was well planned out. We were going to have the dog family and the cat family, and just kind of go into that whole dog people versus cat people kind of I don't know, say stereotypes, but that whole dogs versus cats war. And yes, giving all the dogs different personalities and everything was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, the dogs were so cute. I feel like they stole the show. And like, I'm always worried about reading dog books. I'm like, oh, they're cutesy covers. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have a personality, So I love this. What is your favorite trope to write? And what is your favorite trope to read?
I would say for both of them, probably enemies to lovers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's like probably one of the most common responses, but there's just that great tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the banter and the chemistry and like like they're bickering to hate each other, and you're like, but they're gonna get into bed together.
Exactly.
I love this. So, what are you currently reading?
Wow, what am I currently reading? I feel like I've been reading so many different things that like I have just been I just actually wrapped up a great mystery story that's coming out, I think, in June. It's from Nekesa Afia, Dead Girls. It's set in 1920s Harlem, which is really exciting to read about. And I have about to start a book by Casey Dombrowski called When We're 30, which is about it's a romance about a couple who's made like a marriage pact, and then one of them comes calling to say, okay, it's time to take up on this. So I'm looking forward to starting that soon.
Oh my God, that sounds so good. And so what has been a book you read this past year that you can't stop rushing about?
One of them is definitely Elizabeth Everett's A Lady's Formula for Love, which is, if you've heard, it's historical romance with lady scientists in the Victorian area and bodyguard. And it's really, really good. Really good.
I love this. Yeah, that book is on my TBR. It's been highly recommended as like a historical must read,
Definitely.
So tell us where you can find you online.
I am on, pretty much, I feel like almost everything. I'm on Twitter most of the time. Mm-hmm. And do you want my Twitter handle or? Yeah. Okay. I'm on Twitter as TA Martin, and I'm on Instagram, and I do have a Facebook page, which I try to update, but mostly interesting on Twitter and Instagram, if I'm interesting at all.
That's awesome. So we'll put the links in the show notes. So that's awesome. So thank you, Alanna, for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. For book recommendations, author interview archives, and other fun book resources and tips, please visit WhatchReNextBlog.com. The Watch Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Network. To discover new shows to listen and love, please visit frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.